Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about leadership and how that's going to help us win a championship. Let's go ahead and just dive right into it.
When we lost in the finals to the Celtics in 2008, that was a turning point. So I had to understand what their journey was. How are they feeling as people? What are they going through? And when you do that, you have that empathy. It also helps you to be a better leader.
So, a leader. Having a good leader, does that help you win a championship? The reason why I'm asking that is recently Braden Fajoko was watching the NBA. I think he must have been thinking about it, and he had asked, in terms of Kawhi Leonard, is he a leader?
You're not highlighting how bad Kawhi is in terms of leadership.
And then he ended up asking a specific question. He said, does leadership equal championship? Now, I'm not going to go into Kawhi Leonard. This is geared towards the Chargers. But I want to dive into what it means for us, because there has been, frankly, a lot of turnover in leadership for the Chargers in the last couple of years. So what do I mean by that? Well, clearly we've had turnover with the head coach, but there's been a lot more than that in terms of the players, right? So a big player, obviously, is Justin Herbert, and he had a lot of questions about leadership and his ability to lead men.
And what sounds the alarm for future failure? The player that perfectly encapsulates that answer is Oregon quarterback Justin Herbert.
But I am not confident that Justin Herbert is going to succeed as an NFL quarterback.
And we have very clearly seen with our own eyes that he is a very, very good leader, which is really interesting, because that begs the question, if so many people had difficulty recognizing that quality in him, and yet he so flawlessly has demonstrated that ability once he got onto the field, and it makes you kind of question, what is leadership, and why is it so difficult for us to define it as if we're a GM, if we're going to put ourselves in that shoe, or even just a fan. How come we can't necessarily define that as clearly? I have an answer for that, I feel. A little bit about myself and why I feel qualified to at least talk about it a little bit beyond just being a fan, is that for those of you that don't know, I was in the military for 8 years.
All right.
And I was an E5 sergeant, but beyond that, in civilian, when I got out, I was a manager and a leader, and for many years. And so I've had a lot of people who worked under me, for me, that sort of thing. And I've also had a lot of great people. I've been fortunate enough to lead me, especially in the military. So it gives me a little bit of perspective that I feel like I can talk about this. So bear with me as we kind of dive into this. And I will say this too. Let's be honest. That's a little bit of a downtime when it comes to the NFL, Charger news. So figured we're going to take this opportunity to chat about it. So leadership, and how do I define what leadership is? Well, a great analogy I once heard, and I thought this was really interesting, is a leader or leadership is a lot like going to the gym. If you go to the gym once for 9 hours, you pump it, you're working out like crazy. You're going to go look in the mirror afterwards, and you're not going to see any results. But if you go to the gym every single day for only 20 minutes, eventually at some point you're going to start to see results, right? Another analogy that's very similar is brushing your teeth. If you go, let's say, to the dentist once and you get your teeth cleaned and all that, great, that's wonderful. But is that going to mean all of a sudden your teeth is healthy? No. if you're brushing your teeth just 2 minutes a day, every single day, eventually you're going to start to see results and upkeeping and quality of the health of your teeth, right? So those are kind of interesting, unique analogies, but they really work well in terms of leadership. And how is that so? Well, being a leader is something that you work at every single day. It's not something that you can get hoorah, excited, like I'm ready to be a leader and fight for, get people to fight for me. You're not going to really have that if you aren't there every day working hard with people. And that's something that I feel is a great quality that a lot of our leaders have. A great example is somebody you might not really necessarily think about right away when you think of leadership on the Chargers. But to me, it's Keenan Allen. He's a very tenured, if not the most tenured athlete now, wide receiver here on the Chargers. And it's interesting. When he first came onto the Chargers, he had made the mistake of posting anything on social media. He had worn a Raiders hat. And it's pretty well documented that when he first started, he wasn't really, it didn't seem like he was all in necessarily, and he just kind of expected to start. But, Malcolm Floyd, for example, was getting the start ahead of him, and he wasn't a starter, and I think that just really bugged him. And he even said at one point he had thought about quitting. And you flash forward to now, and it's night and day difference from, the first short stint of when he became a Charger to where he is now. Now he is the staple of consistency. He is staple of reliability. He is incredibly intelligent, and he works at his craft like no one's business. Is he the fastest wide receiver out there or even on the team? No, he's not. But he works at his craft like no one else. And because of that, other players, other receivers, the Palmers of the world, see that, and they then want to emulate it. They want to copy it. So much like going to a gym, Keenan Allen is quite literally working at his craft every single day. And that is a very strong leader in that sense. And I like to also contribute that style of leadership to somebody like Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert isn't that super vocal hoorah type of athlete. He has his moments, clearly, but he's at the same time, he's very, put your head down, work. Put your head down, work every single day. Playing, catch with all the wide receivers, making sure they understand their routes. He's working with them. And I just absolutely love that. To me, that's one of my favorite qualities of leaders. There are different types of leaders out there that are equally effective in their own way. Obviously, there's a lot more vocal leaders, maybe authoritative type of leaders that you might think of as maybe like a Joe Burrow, you might think of, because he's a great person to kind of compliment and talk to in regards to Justin Herbert, because they seem so different on their surface, and they're in the same draft class. And Joe Burrow was recognized as having great leadership quality, and Justin Herbert wasn't necessarily, which I find so interesting. But what I'm saying is, you don't necessarily see what real leadership is. Joe Burrow has to be a good leader because he has great rapport with those wide receivers, and he's having some success here in his short NFL career. But it has nothing to do with how he acts or talks in front of the media or what kind of fancy suit he wears. It has nothing to do with that. The reality is a player is only going to follow him, like him, play with him, play for him, fight for him, unless he is there every single day working and being the leader off the field and on the field. And I think when he got injured and came back, I think that's how he demonstrated his leadership. But that's enough about Joe Burrow. This, again, is more about the Chargers. And so Justin Herbert is one of my favorite types of leaders because he's not bold in front of the camera. In fact, he kind of plays games with the camera. He's more, hey, let's lead by example and let my character and my integrity and my honesty and my humility show through being consistent and being there every single day. He lives at the Chargers practice field. Like, he lives there. I swear he's probably got a cot somewhere while he's studying tape because it's a lot of players, they might go to the Bahamas or do this or do that. And I remember even just Deshaun Watson he's got all the turmoil going on right now. But they had asked Justin Herbert about, hey, or would you take your team, to Hawaii or wherever Deshaun Watson took his team? And I believe Justin Herbert's response to that was, well, the football field there is just as green as the grass is here.
I think the grass works pretty well here. We've had plenty of our guys show up here, and I guess that's if Keenan needs that, we can work something out.
And I just love that because that kind of response was just, it's almost like it didn't even resonate with him of the possibility of doing that because it takes away from doing all that's just fluff. It takes away from, actually being on the field and doing the hard work that needs to be done. It's required. And that's where the leadership quality about him, something like that, something so seemingly subtle, that's what really resonates with me as a fan.
Just to become a better quarterback, a better teammate, anything I can do to help our team win. And
watching. And I think if I were a player, what would really, really make me feel comfortable and confident going to fight for him is that type of quality. And then, of course, we have our head coach. Our head coach and his communication and his abundance of communication, but he doesn't just talk to talk. He always has real, meaningful things to teach you about. And you know this because as you listen to press conferences and interviews, that's all he ever does is teach. He's teaching you when he's talking to you, right? But he's not talking at you. He's talking with you. Whenever he talks with somebody during an interview, he's engaging with them. He says their name, right? He knows. He always knows something about him. When you listen to him mic'd up with with Brandon Staley, it's like he knows all the players and everything about them, their families, their lives, their Austin Eckler's social media and gaming presence, right? He just knows everything about every player. And he takes a point of pride in doing that. But he's not just some hamming it up to be friends with the player. I mean, he's literally doing that because he wants the players to know that he's invested in them and where they're going and what they're trying to do. I found it really interesting that Brandon Staley once had mentioned, I overheard it when he was talking to the players in terms of go getting their money, right? If you want to, be successful, let's go get your money, meaning, you do really well, you do what you got to do, you're going to earn that big contract. So he's very direct with the players in the sense that, Yeah, I mean, sure, players are playing to play because they love the game, but at the end of the day, they also have families, and they got feed their families, and they want that paycheck, right? So he's very real with them too in that regard. So there's a lot of different styles of leadership, but one thing that Justin Herbert, one thing that Brandon Staley, one thing that that Keenan Allen, they all display is that every single day, that grind, they're there. And I'm going to throw out one last name that I just really love and have learned to appreciate over time is Derwin James. Derwin James is an amazing leader. I think we all know that, right? But what really stood out to me was during one of the behind-the-scenes videos that we're watching with, I think it was the first 24 hours of Brandon Staley as a head coach, one of those videos, and he signs his contract. First thing he does is look up, and there's Derwin James. I'm like, man, does this guy live at the building too? You must have a cot set up. Maybe they got a bunk bed with Justin Herbert, because they must live there. And Derwin James is interesting because he's had, unfortunately, knock on wood here, he's had some injuries, and but at least on its surface, he's never let that get to him. He's always has this motivation, this spirit about him that there's no breaking him, right? And I think that's what everybody sees when he's not on the field. There's a difference there, and one of my favorite things to watch about Derwin James is I would watched a mic'd up with him, and he was talking to Kenneth Murray, and I believe it was Kenneth Murray's rookie season, if I'm not mistaken. And he's just kind of down. Kenneth Murray was just kind of down in the dumps because he didn't have a great play or great game. And Derwin James is just like getting him pumped up and getting him motivated. And he ended up having a pretty good game, if I recall, in that mic'd up. And I just love that about him. He's consistent. Derwin James, he's emotionally always on, aggressive, but not overly aggressive. He's just like, let's get to it. Let's go. And that is a staple of consistency that he brings. And I really love that about him. So I feel like right now we do have a great chance of winning the Super Bowl. And I'm going to say we will win a Super Bowl. But we will because of the leaders that we have and all the different style of leaders, right? So you can't have a whole bunch of leaders that think they know what they're doing, but they don't talk with each other. They don't care about what each other has to say. They only want to do it their way. You need to have people who collaborate, who work together, who talk to each other, and you have to have that. And you have to have somebody who's willing to take all those different strong personalities and meld them together and kind of push them towards one singular goal. And going back to Brandon Staley, I think that's what his biggest skill set is, his biggest strength, is he uses the tool of communication to take those individual talents, the Derwin James, a strong personality, the Justin Herbert, and Keenan Allen, take these superstars and get them to work together towards one common goal. And I'm really excited for where this goes, where this season goes, and to watch it unfold, because watching these different types of leaders, these different styles of leaders, is really, personally, that's what gets me going. And let's be honest, if we have a 17-0 season, which, I would love to have, but we have a 17-0 season, it's highly unlikely. There's going to be a point in the season, knock on wood here, there's going to be a point in the season where, we might lose 1 game, 2 games, that sort of thing. And if we start to see that dive, how is the team going to respond? How are individual players going to respond? There are going to be players like Kenneth Murray, for example, that might be down on the dumps and start to have self-doubt. And I think that's a big thing, is that doubt is a big factor in what keeps you from being able to achieve what it is that you want to achieve, whatever goal you have, is the self-doubt. A great example I can tell you about my personal life is I ended up going to college when the Army paid for my college. But before then, I didn't think I could or would ever go to college because I had self-doubt that I wasn't smart enough. I genuinely felt that way. And it wasn't until my wife came along and said, go to college, I'm dumping you, said, hey, yeah, you're going to go to college. And that, oddly enough, gave me that, you know what? It was a good kick in the butt. That's what I needed. And I figured it out. And then over time, going to school every single day, forcing myself to study every single day. Eventually, I did start to learn. I did start to understand. I did start to grasp things. And before I knew it, I had a college degree. Before I knew it I had a successful career. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking back and I'm just thinking, wow, I have a lot of self-confidence. There's a lot for me to pull from my experiences that when I didn't have self-confidence, I can now take that and look at that now and say, hey, that time that I didn't have self-confidence, I can take that experience, pull from that, and then communicate that to other people and use that as to hopefully help them through whatever they're going through so they can build their own self-confidence. That's what Brandon Staley's doing. Brandon Staley had a lot of turmoil, to say the least, in his life. Having cancer, his father having cancer, his mother dying from cancer. It's very sad, but he did the best with what he could by pulling from that tragedy, that experience, that sadness. He's taken that and he's channeled that experience through communication into a channel into which he can then give that wisdom that he's acquired over the years, give that to his players. And I think players really see that. Even if he didn't vocalize it, they can feel that and I will say this, I really can empathize with him in that regard too. I lost my mother early on in my life, and it was a difficult, trying time, and I feel like I learned a lot from that. Right, so this is a very personal, very open podcast today. But I felt like it was important to talk about it because that's what you do, right? As a leader, again, you're extracting personal tragedies or things that you've gone through. And that's the thing too. There's a lot of players out here, or on our team, or not on any team, but on our team that, they've gone through their ups and downs, and that might be something that creates that self-doubt in them. Or maybe they were successful and hadn't really had many ups and downs up until they got to the NFL, competing with greater players than they've ever competed for, and all of a sudden that self-doubt starts to set in. Well, if you don't necessarily have somebody to help you remind yourself that you're great, remind yourself that you have the ability to succeed, sometimes you need that little extra kick in the butt, that little extra motivation. right? The whole saying of you can lead a camel or a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Well, that's true. You can't make them drink, but you can you can lead them there. And sometimes players will get lost in their own head, or maybe they're on social media on their phones or this or that. And so if you have good leadership, good structure that surrounds you, it allows you to be able to focus. And the last analogy that as one of my own that I really think of when in terms of leadership, you can also really use this in context of a relationship, is to be the backbone for somebody, right? So that self-doubt that I had mentioned that can creep in, if you have a support system that you can trust, that you can rely on when you don't feel you're at your best, at your strongest, you feel like you can go to and talk to, that's going to give you that backbone to help bounce back and get back going. And very, very few people, and there are people out there, very few people can succeed without having that. But the thing is about the NFL and sports teams, there are a lot of players on a roster. And to have success, you're going to have a ton of different types of personalities, not just the strong leaders that I had mentioned, but you're going to have a ton of other players that simply aren't the leaders of a team. And you need to be able to harness whatever challenges or self-doubt that they're going through. You need to be able to funnel and harness that into a winning goal, right? To win a championship, to win the Super Bowl. And that's what being a leader is, to be able to take all those different personalities, all those different skills, strengths, weaknesses, and channel that into a winning goal of winning the Super Bowl in this case. So that's been a little bit about my rant. Didn't necessarily mean to speak at you in this term, but it's something I felt like I wanted to talk about. It means a lot to me. Hopefully, for those of you that are listen all the way through, this resonated with you. What I would like from you is, if you're still listening, comment down below and tell me a little bit about what your view is on leadership. Do you feel like leadership does equal championship? Do you need to have a strong leader to win a championship, to win the Super Bowl? Or is that just one of those things that, we're just kind of, you happen to have a good leader when you win the championship or win a Super Bowl, right? So please give me your thoughts, your opinions on this. I'm really actually anxious to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much. I'm Bolt Dad, Bolt Up, and Bolt Out.